I'm someone who has always felt skeptical about wearing push-up bras. They either feel like they're cutting off my circulation or I feel like I'm spilling out of them, and either way, it's just not cute. I really did think that I was going to have to write off push-up bras forever, but that was until I found the Skims Ultimate Push-Up Bra. This technology in this bra is unlike anything that I have ever seen or felt before. Instead of packing the bra with too much padding, which gives this unnatural lift and causes that spilling over effect, Skims actually found a way for the bra to mimic the shape of a full bust. And so now, not only does it lift my chest, but it also lifts my confidence tenfold. Trust me on this one, you will love it too. So shop the Skims Ultimate Bra Collection and more at skims.com and Skims stores. And after you place your order, be sure to let them know that I sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well, so make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more exclusive Killer Instinct content, you can always find that over on our Patreon, where we post an additional 3 exclusive episodes a month and an exclusive live stream at the end of the month as well. All the links for that are always in the description box below, so you can go check it out there. But as you guys can tell by the title of today's episode, today we are talking about a wild, twisted case. This is the brutal double homicide case of Billie Jean Hayworth and Billie Payne. Because we are dealing with two people that have the same name, Billie and Billie, I'm going to be referring to Billie Jean as Billie Jean and Billie Payne as Billie. So that is how we're going to differentiate the two, so it doesn't get as confusing with me saying Billie over and over and over again and you guys not knowing which one I'm referring to. So Billie Jean for Billie Jean Hayworth and Billie for Billie Payne. So with that being said, let's jump right on into this case today. This case takes place in an area called Mountain City, which is located in East Tennessee. It's a super small but relatively safe town. There's not a lot of major crime. This is said to be a town where you cannot leave your home without running into someone that you know. Everyone went to the same church, the same grocery store, the same gas station. It was an everyone knows everyone type of town. And in Mountain City, Tennessee is where Billie Payne lived. Billie Payne was born on July 10th, 1975 in Boone, North Carolina to his parents, Billy Ray and Beverly. Billy was incredibly well loved by everyone who knew him. On his obituary, there are pages and pages of Billy's loved ones who had the most kind things to say about him. Billy was an avid coin collector. He loved going to flea markets and yard sales. He grew up with his sister Tracy and his brother Josh. Billy was outgoing. He was friends with everyone. He loved bringing people together. He loved the outdoors. He loved camping, four-wheeling, fishing. He was very, very adventurous. Now, when this case took place in 2012, Billy was working as a machine operator at a company called Parkdale Mills, which is a textile factory. And it was there in 2010 that Billy met a woman who would later go on to be his fiance. And that woman was Billie Jean Hayworth. Billie Jean Hayworth was born on March 19th, 1988 to her parents, Carl and Martha. Now, it was said that Billie Jean also enjoyed all things outdoors. She was very active. She loved hiking, swimming, fishing, camping, and she also enjoyed playing volleyball. She loved spending time with her friends and her family. Similarly to Billy, she also loved going to flea markets and yard sales and going on the hunt to see what she could find from there. This was something that her and Billy loved to do together. It was something that they spent a lot of time doing, obviously, because like I said, he had a coin collection. It really was a hobby happy for the two of them. And when Billie and Billie Jean first met, like I said, it was 2010, and in no time at all, the two began a relationship, and Billie Jean quickly moved in with Billie. And shortly after that, the two had their first son together named Tyler. Billie Jean loved the little family that she had between her and her fiance and Tyler. She actually told her sisters shortly before her death that she felt like she was finally experiencing what true love was supposed to feel like. However, sadly, that would not last. This case begins on January 31st of 2012, and at approximately 10:45 a.m. on this day, there were two neighbors who went over to Billie Payne's home. And the reason for this was because Billie typically picked up this specific neighbor's mail for him. He would always pick up the mail and leave it on his counter, and the neighbor would come and retrieve the mail from Billie's home. And so that is exactly what this neighbor was doing on January 31st. They walked up to the back door, which was unlocked, which was not unusual. This was a town where people typically didn't lock their doors at night. And so for the back door to be unlocked, it again was not uncommon. So the neighbors let themselves in as they normally would do. Upon walking into the home and walking into the living room, the neighbors began calling out for Billie or Billie Jean because they noticed that both of their cars were in the driveway. So they figured that they both should or would be home. However, when they weren't getting any response to their names being called, this is when the neighbors began walking down the hallway. And to the left in Billie and Billie Jean's bedroom is when the neighbors discovered 36-year-old Billie found shot dead in his bed, and he had a clear gunshot wound to his face. As they continued down just one room over is when they then discovered 23-year-old Billie Jean laying on the floor, also shot dead. But that was not all. Laying in Billie Jean's arms was her 7-month-old son, Tyler, who miraculously survived and was physically unharmed. Now, the neighbors quickly called police, and police raced over to the scene and confirmed that both Billie and Billie Jean had been murdered. When taking a closer look at their injuries, police discovered that Billie had multiple slashes to his neck alongside that fatal gunshot wound to his face. Police confirmed as well that Billie Jean also had a gunshot wound to the right side of her head. And based off a first look at the crime scene, police were able to theorize that they believe that Billie was shot first and Billie Jean was shot second in this double homicide. Now, while at the crime scene, police did their best to try and collect any evidence that they possibly could. However, there was really nothing for them to collect. There were no fingerprints, there was no DNA, nothing was left behind at the scene. There was also no sign of forced entry. However, like I said, that wasn't very uncommon because the Paynes typically kept their back door unlocked anyways. But whoever went into the home, it was very clear to police. Whoever shot Billie and Billie Jean, they were there for the sole purpose of murdering both of them, and they did just that. Now, what police were able to discover in the home were 2 bullet casings. There was one found in Tyler's baby seat, which was in his nursery, which was where Billie Jean's body was discovered, and there was also another bullet casing found in Billie Payne's pillow. And when taking a closer look at these shell casings, police discovered that they each had an X carved into them. And this stood out to police because this is actually what's often used as a military tactic, and the purpose of it is when you put an X into the bullet, once that bullet hits its target, it's going to break apart, causing even more damage to the intended target. So that stood out to police. Now, based off of this tactic and the fact that there was no murder weapon found, police were questioning at this point if this could have been some professional hit, if this was some sort of professional contracted hit on Billie and Billie Jean. But police wanted to get a little bit better of an understanding as to who Billie and Billie Jean were and what was going on in their lives at the time of the murder. They wanted to see if they had any enemies, if there was anyone out there who would want to hurt them. So they began speaking to the friends and family of Billie and Billie Jean. And when doing this, they also learned about what happened leading up to this murder. Now, Billie and Billie Jean lived in the house that they were discussing discovered in with Billie's father. Now, Billie's father, who was also named Bill, he told police that on the morning of January 31st, he left for work at approximately 5:30 a.m. And when he did, he said that everything was fine, nothing was out of the ordinary, and that when he left, Billie was sleeping, but Billie Jean was awake and feeding Tyler. So everything seemed normal. It started out like a normal morning. Now, investigators then learned from talking to a coworker of Billie's that Billie would catch a ride every single day with this one specific coworker that he had. This coworker would swing by Billie's house every day on the way to work, and January 31st was no different. This coworker said that he arrived to the Payne home at approximately 6 a.m. He went up to the back door, he knocked on it, he called out for Billie, but he didn't get an answer. So ultimately, he got back in his car and drove to work and just figured that Billie wasn't going to be going with him that day. Now, because of this really gave police a rough timeline to work with, and police believe that based off of these accounts, there is a 30-minute time frame in which these murders occurred, which was sometime between 5:30 and 6 a.m. on January 31st. Now, with knowing this time frame, again, police wanted to dig deeper into Billie and Billie Jean's personal life. They wanted to know who their friends were, who their enemies were, and oftentimes in these cases that we cover, we talk about people who never had enemies. No one would ever want to do something like this to them, but that wasn't necessarily the case for Billie Jean and Billie Payne. See, the two of them did have someone out there that was not too fond of them at all. And this is when a woman named Jenelle Potter comes into this case. I'm someone who has always felt skeptical about wearing push-up bras. They either feel like they're cutting off my circulation or I feel like I'm spilling out of them, and either way, it's just not cute. And even though I always wanted to be able to wear one that fits me right, it just wasn't working. I really did think that I was going to have to write off push-up bras forever, but that was until I found the Skims Ultimate Push-Up Bra. You guys know I love all things Skims, and the Ultimate Push-Up Bra is no different. This technology in this bra is unlike anything that I have ever seen or felt before. Instead of packing the bra with too much padding, which gives this unnatural lift and causes that spilling over effect, Skims actually found a way for the bra to mimic the shape of a full bust. And so now, not only does it lift my chest, but it also lifts my confidence tenfold. Trust me on this one, you will love it too. So shop the Skims Ultimate Bra Collection and more at skims.com and Skims stores. And after you place your order, be sure to let them know that I sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Do you say data or data? Well, at my house, we say data. And for the longest time, I thought paying a fortune on my monthly data plan was just normal. But that was until I found out about Mint Mobile and their premium wireless plans that start at just $15 a month. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. You can ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. No matter how you say it, don't overpay for it. Shop data plans at mintmobile.com/killer. That's mintmobile.com/killer. Upfront payment of $45 for a 3-month 5 GB plan is required, which is equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Jenelle Potter grew up in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, with her parents, Buddy and Barbara, and her sister, Christine. Similarly to Mountain City, Kennett Square was a small, everyone knows everyone type of town. And in 2004, Janelle and her parents moved to Mountain City, Tennessee, where they were known to be more of a recluse family. They really didn't leave their house as much. They were known to be a little bit odd. And in a town that was so incredibly connected with one another, they definitely stood out because it seemed that they were almost the opposite of that. Because they were not involving themselves in the community, it made them stand out from everyone else. And it also made them seem a little bit paranoid. Everyone who knew the Potters just described them as being off. Something was odd, something just wasn't right. Now, Janelle's father, Marvin, who also went by the name Buddy, like I said, he was a Vietnam veteran who claimed to have done missions for the CIA. And between Buddy and Janelle's mom, Barbara, the two were incredibly protective of Janelle. Janelle was 30 years old in 2012, and she was still living at home. Janelle had learning disabilities as well as some health conditions, and because of this, Buddy and Barbara put a force field around Janelle. Even when she was of legal age to do all of the things, such as going and hanging out with friends, leaving the house past a certain time, going on the computer without supervision, they would not allow her to do that. It really was like they put this bubble around her, even into her 20s and 30s. Like I said, she did have some learning disabilities, which made her a little bit developmentally delayed. And along with that, she did have type 1 diabetes as well. But according to Janelle's sister, Christine, she said in regards to her parents and Janelle's relationship, quote, "Instead of being herself, my parents tried to make Janelle fit in. They also, in the same breath, would say how different she was, and then she became unable to make friends normally," end quote. Christine said that Janelle was incredibly coddled by their parents, and that Buddy and Barbara always took care of any issues that Janelle ever had. Whether that be academically or socially or personally, they always stepped in to take care of any issues that Janelle faced. Christine herself even said that even though she knew that Janelle had some of these learning disabilities and she had some health issues, she believed that everyone was almost milking Janelle's condition and making it out to be much worse than it actually was. And by they, she specifically is referring to Barbara and Buddy. Now, Christine herself has said that she had a very turbulent relationship with her family. Unlike Janelle, Christine did not stay living at home. However, she did move to Mountain City in 2009, so 5 years after the Potters did, the rest of the family did. And she did this because she wanted to take care of Barbara's mom. Now, Christine lived with her grandmother for a year and 2 months, and according to her, she said the problems between her and her family only grew over that time period, so much so that Christine ended up seeking an order of protection out against her own family. Now, like I said, most people who knew Janelle and knew the Potters described them as very odd, and specifically with Janelle, they described her as being very socially isolated. And because of these two things, because Janelle was not allowed to really go outside of her home and interact with other people and have a social life, she really turned to the world of the internet. She turned to online relationships, online friendships, which, as we all know, this could be a very dangerous territory. But despite being inside most of the time and being chronically online, Janelle did know Billie Payne as well as Billie's sister, Tracy. Tracy worked at the pharmacy in Mountain City, and when she was working there, one day, Janelle came in to the pharmacy to pick up her medications. This was in 2009, and according to Tracy, she said that she could tell that Janelle didn't have a lot of friends, and at the surface, Janelle seemed like a very sweet girl. So she extended an olive branch to begin a friendship with Janelle. And Janelle seemed very excited about this. The two would go to the mall together, they would go out to eat together, but before they were allowed to do any of that, Janelle had to invite Tracy over to the Potter home several times for Tracy to meet Buddy and Barbara, and almost to have Buddy and Barbara vet out Janelle's friends, to vet out Tracy, to make sure that Tracy got the stamp of approval from Janelle's parents before she was allowed to have a friendship with Tracy. And again, this would put Janelle at about 27 years old at this time. But Tracy agreed to do it. She agreed to go over to the Potter home. She met Buddy and Barbara, and Buddy and Barbara allowed Janelle and Tracy to form a friendship. And it was through this friendship that Janelle met Tracy's brother, Billie Payne. Payne. So that is almost how this web is connected here. I know that there are a lot of moving parts in this case already. I know I'm saying a lot of different names, but just to kind of summarize it before we move forward, you have Janelle, who is the daughter of Buddy and Barbara. Janelle made friends with Tracy. Tracy is the sister of Billie Payne. Billie Payne was one of the two people who was murdered in this double homicide. We all know that willpower alone doesn't always crack the case when it comes to weight loss, but what if the key to success was actually hidden in your subconscious all along? Meet Hypnosio, a revolutionary self-hypnotherapy app designed to help you break free from emotional eating, stress cravings, and unhealthy habits without strict diets or calorie counting. Using science-backed hypnotherapy sessions, Hypnosio helps retrain your mind for better portion control, mindful eating, and stress reduction. No drastic lifestyle changes, just an easy, effective way to build lasting habits. Unlike crash diets that just lead to frustration, 94% of users keep the weight off long term because Hypnosio tackles the root cause, not just the symptoms. So, if you're tired of feeling stuck in a cycle of yo-yo dieting, it is time to try something that actually works. Go to the link in show notes, use my code KIP15 and get 15% off your first subscription today. Hypnosio, because the lasting change starts in the mind. Now, Janelle very much enjoyed spending time with Tracy, and she really enjoyed getting to know Billie Payne. Like I said, Janelle met Billie in 2009, and Billie started dating Billie Jean in 2010. And if there was one person that Janelle did not like, it was Billie Jean Hayworth. And it was around the same time that Billie Jean and Billie Payne got together and began dating that Janelle claimed that she was getting harassed on Facebook and other social media platforms by multiple anonymous profiles. And Janelle was convinced that Billie Jean was the one behind the harassment. And in these claims that Janelle was receiving, Janelle was being threatened, saying that she was going to be beat up or hurt or raped and murdered. Every possible horrible thing that you can think of. And again, Janelle fully believed that Billie Jean was behind all of it. Janelle thought Billie Jean was jealous of her. And Janelle made everyone aware of what was going on with these harassing claims. She would constantly post on her Facebook page about how she was getting harassed by Billie Jean. She would say that Billie Jean and Billie Payne were coming after her. She made everyone aware of this. She made it really, really public, not only on Facebook, but again, on other social media sites as well. She was making everyone aware that she was being harassed and that the root of the harassment was Billie Jean. Now, with police having this information, they learned that there's some sort of weirdness, some sort of turbulence going on between Billie Jean, Billie Payne, and Janelle. And with this information, they decide to go to the Potter home and give them a visit. So police drove over to the Potter home and sat down with Barbara, Buddy, and Janelle. Now, when police sat down with the three of them and told them the reason that they were there, told them that there was a double homicide, Buddy very quickly responded to this in a way that stood out as odd to authorities. Buddy jumped in and said, "Everyone always wants to point the finger at us." Again, police were taken aback by this response because upon hearing that there's a double homicide in your small town, you might think that you might meet this information with compassion and empathy, but instead they immediately throw themselves into this victim mentality of everyone always wants to point the finger at us. Now, Janelle very quickly jumped in after Buddy's statement and said that Billie Jean and Billie Payne had been harassing her nonstop, again, because they were jealous of her. Janelle said that Billie Jean would say that Janelle was too pretty and she was jealous of the friendship and potential relationship that Billie Payne and Janelle had. She said that Billie Jean and Billie Payne had been doing things like going to her house, coming up her driveway, threatening her in the yard. Janelle said that these issues all began when a friend of Billie Jean's yelled at Janelle at a grocery store for using her food stamps card, and once that one altercation happened, it set out a domino effect of threats and harassment, all at the hands of Billie Jean and Billie Payne. Janelle said that Billie Jean's friends and Billie Jean made multiple profiles on Facebook harassing and mocking Janelle, and just overall that they were horrible to her. Now, it was during this conversation between police and the Potters that police asked Janelle if she knew of a man named Jamie Curd. Now, the reason that they asked this was because there were friends of Billie Payne and Billie Jean who told authorities that Jamie and Billie Payne were actually co-workers, and that other coworkers had overheard Jamie Curd telling Billie that he was going to slice his throat. Now, obviously, because of this, you can imagine this brings up questions. So, who is Jamie Curd? Jamie Curd was in his mid-30s. He was living with his mother in Mountain City, Tennessee, and also happened to be Billie's second cousin. So, not only was he just a coworker, he was actually family with Billie. The two of them grew up together, and they were said to have more of a brother relationship than that of distant cousins. And the only reason that Jamie knew Janelle or the Potters to begin with was because of Janelle's friendship with Tracy and Billie Payne, because Tracy had set Janelle and Jamie up together. Janelle was the first one who showed interest in Jamie, and she had asked Billie for Jamie's phone number. But because Janelle was not allowed to date, Janelle had to call Jamie in short 30 to 45 second phone calls from her home phone because she did not want to get caught by her parents. Like I said, Janelle was very sheltered, but Jamie found his way around this. He would ask Janelle to hang out by offering to go fix the Potter family computer. He told the family that he was very well versed in computers. He knew a lot about them. And whenever Janelle would say there was a computer problem, she would invite Jamie over, and it was their way of spending some time together without being questioned by her parents. Along with this, Jamie also went out of his way to purchase a secret cell phone for Janelle that he hid in the bushes of the Potter family home, and Janelle used that cell phone to text, call, and communicate with Jamie. And these were definitely romantic communications that the two of them were having with each other. Janelle would sign off her text messages with Jamie as your wife, but when police asked Janelle about Jamie and the potential relationship, she definitely downplayed it, said it was strictly a platonic friendship, if that. But again, the text messages definitely proved otherwise. What police were able to later figure out was that Janelle had disclosed to Jamie the harassment that she was experiencing at the hands of Billie and Billie Jean. And this is what sparked an altercation between Jamie and Billie at work. And that is when coworkers overheard Jamie threaten Billie, saying that he was going to slash his throat. It was over this whole harassment claim that Janelle was making. And from Billie's side of things, he kept saying he had no idea what these harassment claims were and that Janelle was crazy and she was making all of this up. But again, Jamie was defending Janelle. Now, because of these accusations, police did ask Jamie to come down to the police station to have a conversation with them. Now, initially, when asked about the double homicide, Jamie denied having any involvement with this. He also denied having any involvement with Janelle. And when asked if he would be willing to take a polygraph test, he agreed, but he failed that polygraph test. He failed every single question on the polygraph test. And the questions on the test ranged everywhere from what his relationship with Janelle was like to having any information regarding this double homicide between Billie and Billie Jean. Now, when detectives were given the results of the polygraph, this is when they really hit Jamie with some more hard-hitting questions. They questioned him for hours until ultimately Jamie cracked. He admitted that he knew way more than he was letting on, and not only that, he confessed that he was actually there at the Payne home when Billie and Billie Jean were killed. However, he said he was not the one who shot them, and instead, it was Janelle's dad, Buddy Potter, who shot and killed Billie and Billie Jean. But the one thing that Jamie did confess to was being the one who slashed Billie's throat. So he did admit to having that part in the murders. Now, because of this, obviously, Jamie was arrested on February 7th of 2012, so about a week after the murders had occurred. And in order to help himself, he told authorities that he would agree to work with them to try and get Buddy to confess to the murder and incriminate himself over the phone. He was going to make a recorded phone call and try and get Buddy to talk about the double homicide. Now, over the phone, while Buddy did not flat out confess to the murders, he did insinuate everything that he needed to in order to essentially put those pieces of the puzzle together. He told Jamie on the other end of the line that he had gotten rid of any and all evidence, which really was enough for authorities to go back to the Potter home and speak with Buddy. Now, according to detectives, they said that in the midst of this conversation, Buddy was not as friendly. He did not meet police with as friendly as a tone as he had originally done the first time, and at one point, they claimed that Buddy made a gesture to his pocket, and police were worried that he was reaching for a weapon, and so because of this, they arrested him right then and there and brought him down to the police station for further questioning to ask him more about these murders. But when he sat down, Buddy was adamantly denying everything. He said he had no idea what happened, he had no idea why this happened, but police were not backing down because they had the confession from Jamie, who said that Buddy was the one who did this. Police told Buddy that they knew that he did this and that it wasn't even a guess to them or a question to them. They knew for a fact. And after hours of questioning, Buddy also admitted his involvement. He stated that when people are constantly harassing and threatening his daughter and his family, they left him with no choice. So he was ultimately saying that it was due to the harassment that Janelle was experiencing that he had to kill Billie and Billie Jean. Now, police did allow Buddy to call Barbara first and confess to her over the phone before going into further detail with them. And while on the phone with Barbara, Buddy said, "I did it." So because of this, Buddy was also arrested. Now at this point, police did get a search warrant to go through the Potter home, and inside the home, they found countless guns. There were guns in the closet, there were guns in the mattress, there were guns in the cabinets, there were guns everywhere. They also found multiple knives scattered throughout the house, and along with that, police also found several printed out pictures. And this is where things get suspicious, as if they weren't already. But these printed out pictures were of Billie Jean Hayworth, and they were from her Facebook. These were pictures that Billie Jean had uploaded herself onto her Facebook profile, and the Potters had printed out these pictures. When police did further investigation into the forensics and the technical side of the Potter family computer, they were able to see that Janelle had downloaded these pictures onto the computer. She then emailed them to herself with the subject line as Billie Whore, and then printed the pictures out. There was also another picture of Billie that was printed out with the word bitch written across the top of it. And weirdly enough, as if this wasn't bad enough already, while detectives were sitting on the couch while the house was being searched, taking down note of every piece of evidence that was found in the home, logging everything that they were seizing, Barbara was sitting on the seat next to them, and these pictures of Billie Jean, these printed out photos, were sitting on the coffee table in front of detectives, and Barbara picks up the pictures and rips it in half. Rips the pieces of paper in half. Now, according to Barbara, she said that she did this out of nervous habit. She didn't realize what the piece of paper was. She wasn't sure what was going on. It wasn't intentional, but authorities were not buying it. Authorities also seized the family computer, and they also took a look inside of Buddy's car. Buddy had a truck, a black truck, and inside of the truck, police discovered multiple .38 caliber bullets that also had an X carved into them. Like I mentioned previously, the bullets that were found at the Payne home also had the X in them. But along with that, in the bed of Buddy's truck, police discovered several white trash bags, and inside of these trash bags were shredded pieces of paper. It seemed as if someone had taken many documents, put them through a paper shredder, and put those paper shreddings into trash bags, put them in the back of the truck, and never got rid of them. Now, luckily for police, they were able to obtain these trash bags, send them off to the forensics lab, and have an agent go through and dissect each and every one of those paper shreddings, and that took all in all about a month. There was a month's worth of time that an agent went through each and every one of those paper shreds and put together the documents that were all shredded up. And we will get back to what those documents said in a moment. But all in all, there were 51 items seized from the Potter family home. And at this point, like I said, very small community, and word was starting to spread about the arrests of Buddy and Jamie. And many people had many opinions about this. And the most consistent opinion, and the one that most people were talking about, is that they believe that even though Buddy and Jamie were the ones who actually went out and physically committed this act, they believed that Janelle and Barbara were the ringleaders and the mastermind behind the entire double homicide, and that the two of them manipulated Jamie and Buddy into carrying out the acts of the kill. Now, since this, police have come forward and said that they always wanted to charge Janelle and Barbara. From the very beginning, they knew that they had some sort of involvement in this, but there wasn't enough evidence against them. Janelle and Barbara did a very good job of playing this innocent act, of playing this damsel in distress act, and playing this victim mentality. But according to Billie Jean's sisters, they claim that Billie Jean told them months prior that Janelle was the instigator in all of this. Tracy, who was Billie's sister, also said the same thing. Billie Jean would call her sisters, saying that she was being followed by Janelle and that it was all rooted in jealousy over Billie Payne. Investigators were able to see that in 2010, like I had previously mentioned, when Billie Payne and Billie Jean began their relationship, this is when all of the harassment towards Janelle came out of the woodworks. This is when all of the negativity was being directed towards Janelle, and that there were also multiple anonymous profiles that began to write negative comments about Billie and Billie Jean's relationship. So it wasn't just harassment towards Janelle. There were anonymous profiles who were saying horrible things regarding Billie and Billie Jean's relationship as well. And a lot of these comments were coming from a website called Topics. Now, Topics was a website and an internet forum that pretty much allowed for any specific town or area to write whatever they wanted. We now have websites like this and apps like this. There's one called Nextdoor. There's Facebook groups for specific neighborhoods. But with Topics, you were able to almost confine it to your specific area. And this is where news articles could be posted. Dating forums were posted. There were different categories depending on what you were looking for, but it really did seem like a one-stop shop for everything. And when Billie Payne and Billie Jean got together, it seemed like multiple people from Mountain City began writing horrible things about Billie Jean. They were saying that Billie Jean and her friends were quote unquote no good whores who sold drugs. They were accusing Billie Jean's friends of having HIV. And not only were these comments tearing down Billie Jean, but they were also speaking very highly of Janelle. One comment towards Janelle said, quote, "And this girl Janelle, I do know her in passing, but she is a good girl who was brought up right. You can tell. She is a sweet girl. I will be praying for Janelle." End quote. One profile who was consistently posting things bashing Billie Jean and talking up and speaking highly of Janelle was a man and a profile named Matt Potter, another person of the Potter family. And it did not take long for people to start putting the pieces together that Janelle was behind the Matt Potter name. And when Billie and Billie Jean were seeing the harassment and seeing what was being posted, Billie actually printed out all of the posts and all of the things that were being said, and he gave it to his sister Tracy, who at the time was still friends with Janelle. And Tracy actually went to Janelle and posted on Janelle's Facebook wall, telling Janelle to stop posting negative things about Billie Jean and their family, but Janelle immediately denied having any involvement and said that she did not know who Matt Potter was. And I say this to show that people were picking up on the fact that it seemed as if Janelle was behind all of this. Janelle was the one who was making these profiles and saying these horrible things, and people were confronting her about it, but she denied it all. But it wasn't just Janelle who had suspicion towards her, because suspicion also grew for Barbara as well. Police thought that Barbara's reaction to all of this was very abnormal and very questionable. When Jamie called the Potter family home after his confession to try and incriminate Buddy, Barbara was actually the first one who answered the phone, and she was asking many questions about how the meeting went, if Jamie passed the polygraph test, which he lied about and said that he did. And Barbara just very much seemed to have a lighthearted take on all of this. She kept saying how wonderful everything was. She was so relieved that everything went well with Jamie. And when Buddy called Barbara to confess over the phone about what he did, Barbara immediately jumped into defense mode, saying that Buddy wasn't acting like himself. He wasn't on his medication. There was no way he did this. Tell them you're not guilty. She said, quote, "You have to say you're not guilty. Just stick with not guilty. Buddy, they try and trick. You just have to say you're not guilty." End quote. Barbara kept repeating that Buddy was home with her all throughout the night on January 30th and in the morning of January 31st. And we've talked about many cases where the wife or anyone in the family will be shocked when hearing a confession. It's very much, no, you didn't do this. I can't believe this. What are you talking about? But Barbara didn't seem shocked. Barbara more so just seemed like things weren't going according to her plan. After Buddy and Jamie's arrest, Barbara and Janelle continuously visited the public library to each use the computers that were available there, and employees would watch as they would each be glued to the screens, going on websites like Facebook and Topics or any other forum that they could to try and perpetuate this narrative that Janelle was the real victim here. They were still trying to say that Janelle was the one who was being harassed. Janelle was the one who had to deal with all of this, and now they're being looked into as a family, and they're still the victims of all of this. So with this all being said, let's get back to the bags of the shredded paper that police sent off to the forensics agent, who again tirelessly reconstructed more than 100 pages of shredded up papers. Now, all of these papers appeared to be screenshots, pictures, and emails that were sent to and from the Potter family. And what police learned very quickly is that when it came to anything on the technology side of things, any emails, any pictures, any forums, anything, it was all by Barbara and Janelle. Buddy never went on the computer. Buddy was not a technology guy, so anything that was online was all from Barbara and Janelle. So they were seeing a lot of emails from the Potters, but specifically from Janelle and Barbara. And Janelle and Barbara were emailing back and forth between them and a man named Chris. Barbara would be emailing Chris would be emailing Barbara, Janelle would also separately be emailing Chris, and back and forth. And Chris is supposedly a man who was in the CIA, and he had been emailing with the Potters regarding Janelle over the threats that were on her life and over the harassment that she had endured. Now, according to Janelle, even though she said that she had never met Chris, he was a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed CIA agent who was communicating with Barbara and Janelle through Janelle's own email account. Chris did not have a separate email. Chris would email through Janelle's email and just in the email would say, "It's Chris." That's how he would identify himself through the emails. That's how Barbara would know, oh, I'm speaking to Chris now. I'm not speaking to Janelle, even though it was still Janelle's same email address. Same thing with Janelle, with the emails that she was writing back and forth between her emails it was still her same email, regardless of if she was talking to Chris or not. She was still using her email. Chris was emailing her through her email. If you're confused, it's because you should be. This doesn't make sense. And Chris wasn't only just communicating with Janelle and Barbara, he was also communicating with Jamie, again, through Janelle's email account, of course. Now, in the emails that Chris was sending to Jamie, he was doing things like giving Jamie relationship advice on how to be a better boyfriend to Janelle. If Janelle had posted pictures on Facebook, Chris would email Jamie asking if Jamie had seen the pictures, or if they were going to go on a date, Chris would suggest where they should go, what the date should be like, what Chris should do on the date. Now, it also appeared from these emails as if Chris was following Janelle, because according to Janelle, she would get emails that told her what she was wearing that day. Chris would tell her he saw her wearing this specific colored shirt and these types of pants, and you had your hair like this that day. But again, Chris and Janelle never actually met. Janelle said that Chris spoke to her about his job in the CIA and that killing people does not bother him at all, and that it's something that he's been doing all of his life with his work in the CIA. And more than that, Chris also said that he would monitor Billie and Billie Jean for Janelle, just to be on the lookout, just to surveillance them. He would bug their house, tap into their phones, surveillance their home, and he told Janelle and Barbara via email that he would protect Janelle at all costs. And Barbara specifically seemed very, very intrigued with Chris's offerings. In one email to Chris, Barbara wrote in regards to Chris and Buddy meeting together. And Barbara told Chris, quote, "You guys meet when you are ready, Chris. Maybe Bud can use your CIA guns for his protection. Get the jobs done, you know? They all need to go, and the ones left need to be given a big scare as they watch and wonder, am I next?" End quote. She also wrote in another email, quote, "We've had enough. No one wants to kill anyone, but we will." End quote. Now, interestingly enough, during Jamie Curd's initial confession to police, when he sat down with authorities and he confessed to his part in all of this, he had asked detectives if the CIA was there and if the CIA was listening. And at that point in this investigation, authorities were not aware of Chris at all. But Jamie, in this moment, when asking about the CIA, detectives were obviously taken aback. That's not a normal question to ask. And when they asked why he was curious about that, Jamie went on to say that he had been texting with a man named Chris who told Jamie that he was in the CIA and that he and Jamie needed to protect Janelle at all costs. Jamie went on to tell the detectives that Janelle had introduced him to Chris, and Janelle told him that Chris was a friend of the family, someone who was like a brother to her. She told Jamie that Chris worked for the CIA and that he had a house in Tennessee and Pennsylvania, and she said that her and Chris were the same age and that they also went to the same high school together. Now, at this point, when learning all of this, police were very confident that there is no Chris. Chris did not exist. Police did not believe that Janelle was secretly working with some CIA agent who was out there trying to fight Janelle's battles for her, but instead they believed that Chris was a scapegoat. They believed that Chris was a character that Janelle had used and created to strengthen her story, but also simultaneously to feed into her delusion. And in order to confirm this, one afternoon, Janelle and Barbara actually went to the sheriff's office. This was after Buddy and Jamie's arrest. They went there to once again report harassment that they claimed that Janelle was receiving, and police asked if Janelle and Barbara would sit down at the computer separately and each type up a harassment report. And the reason that they wanted to do this was to take each one of their reports and compare them to the emails that quote unquote Chris was sending. And when they did that, they were able to see a lot of similarities. They saw a lot of the same grammatical errors. They saw all of the same spelling mistakes. The verbiage was the same. The words that they used to describe things were the same. And this is when police were just more confident than ever that Janelle was posing posing as Chris and sending emails to her mom and to Jamie reporting false threats against her life, false threats of rape, false threats of murder, and that Janelle was behind all of the harassment towards herself. What this meant is that Janelle was creating all of the anonymous accounts that were saying bad things about her, all of the anonymous threats that were being pointed at Janelle. These were all being created by Janelle herself. Janelle was essentially catfishing her mom and Jamie as Chris, and Barbara, being the protective mom that she was, then took those threats, took those emails, printed out the documents, and shared them with Buddy. And it is believed that Barbara did not know that Janelle was pretending to be Chris. It is believed that Barbara was equally as naive to believe that there was a CIA agent contacting her daughter and that the three of them were in this email chain together, that Janelle was emailing Chris, that Chris was emailing Barbara. It's believed that Barbara did not know that Janelle was behind this all. And I say we don't fully know. Barbara still claims that she is convinced to this day that Chris is real and that Janelle did not make Chris up and that Chris is exactly who he says that he is and that he was the one behind all of this, that he was the one that committed these murders and that they just have never met this man, don't know who he is, but he was the one behind it all. And Barbara claims that she too was a victim of hacking online. She said that all of the emails where she says no one wants to kill but we will, the emails where she's using that type of word and that type of verbiage, she claims that she did not do that, that was not written by her, and that she was hacked. But as if police were not convinced enough already, it was discovered when tracing back the emails that all of the Chris emails were sent from the Potters' home computer. It was all traced back to their IP address. All of this was coming from inside of the home. And a year and a half after the murders of Billie Jean and Billie Payne, in August of 2013, Janelle and Barbara were arrested and charged with murder. And Janelle's motive for the murder, you might be asking, was strictly jealousy. If Janelle couldn't have Billie Payne, no one else could. Now, before we jump into Barbara and Janelle's trial, I do want to mention that Buddy also went to trial in October of 2013, and he was found guilty of the murders of Billie Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Now, Jamie Curd, on the other hand, he took a plea deal and he received 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. So those were the sentences for both Buddy and Jamie. So now, with that being said, let's jump into the trial of Janelle and Barbara. So these two went to trial in May of 2015, and during the trial, pretty much the star key witness in this trial was Jamie, because as a part of his plea deal, he agreed to testify against Janelle and Barbara. And according to him, he claimed that when Billie and Billie Jean had initially started dating, the two hit it off right away and that Billie fell head over heels in love with Billie Jean. Jamie also said that it was right after Billie Jean got pregnant that Janelle had a noticeable shift in her. She began to make horrible comments about Billie Jean and the baby. She said things like Billie Jean did not deserve to have Billie's child and that the relationship would not last long. She kept insinuating that this was a very casual relationship between Billie and Billie Jean. However, the more serious the relationship got, the more angry Janelle seemed to have been. Jamie said that it was also around this time when Billie and Billie Jean got together that Jamie began receiving text messages from Chris. Jamie said that in these text messages, Chris was telling Jamie that Janelle was being harassed online on the website topics and on Facebook, and that all of this harassment was coming from Billie Jean, and that Chris and Jamie together had to join forces and protect Janelle at all costs. Now, Jamie testified and said that he never spoke to Chris on the phone, and that Chris actually told Jamie that he had a phobia of phones and he did not like to use them, and that is why they couldn't get on a phone call to talk through all of this. Now, when it came to the murders themselves, Jamie said that on the night of January 30th, 2012, Janelle had invited Jamie over to do some work on their family computer. Now, while Jamie was at the Potter home and in the computer room, he claimed that Buddy came into the room when Jamie was by himself and asked Jamie if he would help Buddy do a favor. When Jamie asked what this favor was, Buddy simply said that he just needed Jamie's help in driving him over to Billie Payne's home and just waiting for him in the car. Very simple, very easy task, according to Buddy. And at this time, Buddy did not give Jamie a time or date. Jamie said that he really wasn't sure what the purpose of this was, what this was really about at all, according to him, but he did agree to do this for Buddy whenever he needed it. Jamie said that shortly after this conversation, he went home later that night, and that is when Janelle called him in the very early morning hours of the 31st and told Jamie that her dad needed his help that morning. And she also suggested that Jamie did not bring his cell phone with him. Jamie said shortly after this call with Janelle, Buddy drove over to Jamie's house and picked him up in the early morning hours of the 31st. Jamie said that the two then got into Buddy's car and Buddy drove the two of them over to the Payne home. Jamie said that the two of them then waited in the car for Billie Payne's father to leave for work that morning, like I said earlier, at approximately 5:30 in the morning. And when that happened, Buddy told Jamie that it was time to go in. Before getting out of the car, Buddy handed Jamie a gun. And according to Jamie, he told Buddy that he was not going to kill anyone. That is what he said before going in to the house. But Buddy told Jamie that he didn't need him to kill anyone, and all he needed Jamie to do was stand by the door, which Jamie agreed to do. Moments later, both Buddy and Jamie walked towards the house. Buddy went inside, and Jamie claimed that he stayed outside of the home. Buddy then walked inside of the home where he shot and killed Billie Payne and Billie Jean. Afterwards, Jamie did confess to going inside of the home and slicing Billie's throat. Now, according to Jamie, he said that he was completely manipulated by the Potter family. He said that the three of them had devised this plan and used him as a pawn in their game, but clearly he was still involved. He still went along for the ride in this double homicide. Now, Janelle's social media activity was discussed in this trial. It was a heavy topic of discussion in this trial, and there is absolutely no way that I could run you through all of what was said on Facebook from Janelle, because detectives pulled over 2,800 pages of social media activity from Janelle's accounts that were just linked to talking about Billie Jean and Billie Payne. So the 2,800 pages were strictly about Billie Jean and Billie Payne. And in essence, what is learned through Janelle's social media activity is that Janelle created multiple anonymous profiles to harass herself, to threaten herself, and to blame it on Billie Jean and Billie Payne. She created this character of Chris and brought him into the mix and convinced her parents that this was all real and happening. But what they didn't realize is that Janelle was the one who was behind the harassment the entire time. Billie Jean was not harassing Janelle. I want to make that very clear. Janelle was making all of this up for the purpose of jealousy and attention. And in a twist of events in the trial, the prosecution was actually able to bring to the stand who they believe was the real Chris. Let me explain. As I mentioned earlier, Janelle had told Jamie that Chris was someone that she went to high school with. So police went back to Janelle's high school, looked through the people she went to school with, and found a man named Chris Jaden. Now, the reason that they are so confident that it is this specific man that Janelle was referring to was because Janelle did include a last name in several of the emails that she sent, and that last name was Jaden. She used Chris's first and last name in several of these emails. That man exists. That man went to high school with Janelle, but that man was not in the CIA and trying to protect Janelle from all of this. Now, Chris and Janelle went to the same high school in Pennsylvania. However, now Chris was working as a police officer in Delaware, and he went down to the trial and testified against Janelle. And according to him, he said that he had not spoken to Janelle since the year 2000 when they graduated high school. Chris said that he remembers Janelle from high school. They had 2 classes together and they spoke a few words here and there, just in passing exchanges, but they weren't friends by any means. They had different friend groups. They were not really intertwined in any way, shape, or form. And more than that, he said that he had no role in this whatsoever. He did go out of his way to say that he remembers Janelle being very strange. She was a little odd. And for the prosecution, it was important to bring Chris up there because it was important for him to share his side of this, because clearly this is who she is referring to, because she's using first and last names here. So it's not just some Chris, some guy named Chris that no one knows. It's this guy. And this guy is sitting there saying that he had no involvement in it. And there was really no one who was questioning that. I don't think anyone has ever questioned that Chris Jaden had any involvement in this whatsoever. And the prosecution used this testimony to their advantage in several different aspects, and one of those being that it raised the question of if Janelle liked Chris in high school, if she went as far as creating this storyline that Chris was her knight in shining armor who was coming to save the day, coming to protect her. She now had 2 men, Jamie and Chris, who were in essence fighting over her and fighting to protect her. And if that made her feel some sort of satisfaction, and if that made her feel good about herself because she felt like she had 2 men fighting for her love. Now, the defense, on the other hand, tried to claim that Janelle was not capable of doing something as calculated as this. They called in an expert to testify about Janelle's cognitive ability, to which it was said that Janelle operates at the level of a child. However, the prosecution, on the other hand, completely denies this. A direct quote was, "Janelle may operate at a 4th grade level, but she has a PhD in manipulation." The prosecution also argued that social media allowed Janelle to hide behind all of these different profiles and facades, and she was able to invent these different identities that could be as hateful as she wanted to be, and she could hide behind this persona that she's created. They also said that she was feeding into Barbara's delusions, knowing her parents were going to do whatever they had to do to protect her. But it doesn't make Barbara or Buddy any less guilty either. And I do want to emphasize that because I know we're talking a lot here about Janelle's part in all of this, her calculated, manipulative nature in all of this. But Barbara was equally as much of a participant in this. In the emails to Chris, Barbara saying that she doesn't care what has to happen. She doesn't want to kill, but she will. Suggesting that Buddy uses Chris's CIA guns as a form of protection, ripping the picture of Billie Jean in half when the police were scouring through the Potter family home. Barbara was just as much as a mastermind in this as her daughter was. And if nothing else, I would go to say that Barbara was almost leading this charge in front of Janelle, or at least side by side to them, because she was the one who was really putting this plan into motion, feeding all of this information to Buddy, knowing as the protector, as this veteran, he was going to protect his family at any and all costs. Now, regarding Barbara, the prosecution did argue that she knew about the murders and she convinced Buddy to go through with it. They even brought in Google searches that Barbara had done where she had Googled, "Can God forgive a murderer?" Barbara was equally as delusional and calculated in all of this. Now, after a 7-day trial, both Janelle and Barbara were found guilty of first-degree murder, and they were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is where they still both stand to this day. To this day, Janelle and Barbara say that they had nothing to do with this. They don't believe that Buddy had anything to do with this. They don't really talk much about Jamie's involvement in this, but On all other accounts, the three of them have still stayed protecting one another. Barbara's protected Buddy. She said that Janelle had nothing to do with this. Janelle has said that her parents have nothing to do with this and that she has nothing to do with this. They don't believe, even with Buddy's confession, that he had anything to do with this. The three of them are very much protecting each other to this day. But I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this one. So please let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, you guys, that's going to be all from me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I'm your host of Killer Instinct. And before you leave, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. Like I mentioned earlier, we post every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload exclusive content onto our Patreon as well. You can find that link in the description box below. I will be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.